Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to Understanding Publisher Economics, a session that was presented at Winter Institute 2026 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hi, everybody. Great. Can you hear? Can everybody hear? Is that good? In the back row, do you hear? Okay.
Thumbs up.
Thank you. Welcome to Understanding Publisher Economics. We had the best prep call doing this, so I hope it translates into the slide version. But here we go. Housekeeping. I'm sure most of you have seen this slide already today, and I'm not going to read it to you. Just be aware of all those things. I'll give you 2 seconds to look at it in case you haven't seen it yet, including silence your cell phones. You heard me earlier this morning about antitrust guidelines, so the rules haven't changed since this morning. Please, no discussion of pricing policies, dividing up the market, or boycotts.
It's no fun. That's no fun.
Yeah, really. The objectives, these are the objectives that we have for all of you. And now, here's the agenda. I'm going to do introductions first. And to my right, immediately to my right, Sanj Karbanda, who is the associate publisher of Beacon Press. And next to Sanj is Paula Amendolora, who is the Senior Vice President of Sales of Sourcebooks. And next to Paula is Craig Poplars, who is the VP of Sales and Marketing at Milkweed.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, that sounded convincing.
Suddenly I was like, wait, now,
Is he
Craig,
still with that
I've known Craig I've known all of these people for a very long time. I'm Joy with ABA. And we're really excited. We did this. It's funny. The last time we did this session was 10 years ago. And it was in Denver when a huge snowstorm hit the East Coast and people couldn't get to Denver. Here we are again. We're doing it now. Unfortunately, Morgan Entrican, the publisher of Grove Atlantic, was supposed to be here, but he is a victim of the snowstorm. So Morgan,
and we were all counting on Morgan.
Yes, he's a big
Just
talker.
to let you guys know, this is like the Doobie Brothers now without Michael McDonald. Okay, because you're like, yeah, this sounds all right, but without Morgan here,
I know.
You were going to look around
yeah.
and go
So
like, yep, Morgan,
bear
you're
with
right.
us. Yeah.
So bear with us, please. You can see how this will go. There we are. Look, we had it. But none of their titles, which I learned right before I sat down. Okay, we're going to start with just the basic economics. And I don't know how many of you know, ABA has had a slide for years that originally came out of Peter Schurz from Maria's years ago, had posted in his store where every dollar goes in terms of a bookstore sales. For each dollar in a book, this much goes to, paying for the booksellers, this much goes to overhead, etc. So Sanj has created the same thing that I think will really be helpful for all of you in terms of where does each dollar go? And it'll make you understand more when you're thinking that publishers have so much money and why aren't there more galleys? Why aren't they touring more authors? You're going to learn the reason. And we'll start with, these are some of the things. And do any of you want to say anything about this?
Well, I was going to say, again, the three of us are different publishers too. Every publisher, depending on size, depending on their mission, has different stresses and needs per se. But broadly, we're going to look at, and this is a very broad sort of brush, 3 buckets of where money gets used. This is the first bucket that we're talking about, is making it good, right? So a manuscript comes in, that's not the end of the process. There's a ton of work that goes through that. And so that's the first bucket. I'm not going to go through each of those things. If anybody has questions, just ask. The next bucket, sort of making it real. So now we have the content, we've made it good. You actually need the product too. So you have to create the physical book, you have to create the ebook, you have to create the audiobook. All of that costs money. You have to typeset, do a cover, etc., etc. Again, not going to read all of those things. And then the third bucket is make it sell. Right? I mean, just creating a book isn't going to automatically make it sell. So there's a bunch of costs associated with that as well. And Winter Institute is a bucket as well for all of us. So broadly, those are the three buckets. Do you want to add anything?
Well, just that costs are continually going up. That, we always want to make the best product that we can. And we are three very different publishers. Sourcebooks does a lot of genre fiction. And the advent of the stenciled edge on books has added an extraordinary cost to the production of a book. And the fans that buy the genre fiction, they want it to be more special and more collectible with every iteration. So now, at first it was stained edges. That quickly wasn't good enough. Now it's stenciled edges that they're looking for. And we're just waiting for what is the next innovation that we're going to have to turn to. And it's just adding more cost to the P&L every time we go and get a book ready for publication.
So if you look at it individually, you can kind of see. And now the 50 cents to the retailer, as you all know, that depends on the individual publisher terms. It can be 47 cents to the bookseller or to the retailer, et cetera. It really does vary. But as you can see, you're both booksellers and publishers are working with really thin margins. And that's what I hope when you leave, you take that away, that their margins aren't so dissimilar, especially, for a lot of the publishers, that is true. So that's where we are there.
Well, you look at, if you, and I think there's a session from BookScan on Thursday, right? Isn't somebody from Circana doing a session on Thursday?
Yep.
Most books that are published sell less than 2,000 copies in the entire life of that book. Okay. We celebrate, obviously we celebrate the successes when we look at some numbers or the bestseller list. Those are books that are selling thousands, and in some cases that are selling millions. But most books, and there are a ton of books published every year, sell less than 2,000 in their life. So for every publisher, I don't, and there are publishers in the room, and stand up here if it's different for you, but for every publisher, we're in a portfolio business. Most of the books we publish in the course of a year are not going to make money. Our hope is that we do 1, 2, 3 books that are going to support the entire list. And that, in this one, in even this, it says, okay, you could potentially make 2 cents on a buck. Most cases, you don't even make that.
Wait, sorry. There.
In most cases, that doesn't even happen. So, and I'm sure you see that in your stores. That's why you have returns. Most books that come in will sell a certain number. There are X number of successes, and that's it. Come on, Craig, say something.
Well, Milkweed, I was with Algonquin for 25 years, Tenals for about 4 years. Milkweed is my first nonprofit. 2/3 of our income is sales driven. 1/3 of it is from donors and grants that we receive that we work very, very hard for. As a small house, you're absolutely right. Most of what we publish, we're mission driven. We feel that these voices are incredibly important in the fabric of our communities, in the fabric of literature, but most of them don't break even. And for a small house like any independent house, especially, our print runs are much smaller. So when you are talking about the cost of increase, when you don't own your own printing press, like maybe some of the big 5 do, and your print runs are much smaller, that means the unit price goes up even higher. So if we're printing a 10,000 copy printing of a debut novel, we're paying a lot of money because of the quantity that we're doing. Obviously, the more, when you get up to 100,000 and everything, that unit price goes down significantly, but it's gotten harder and harder for us to meet the margins there. So, yeah.
We're also going to talk a little bit about frontlist versus backlist. So, for example, those of you who do children's books know, and this hasn't changed in decades, so much of the children's publishing is backlist driven and really important. So it'll be a little different. Paula might speak some to children's, but in general, the way the dollar goes for kids and adult can vary drastically because of frontlist versus backlist.
Yeah. So for backlist is so important, and backlist is more profitable because once you pay through the advance, then every sale, you're really just paying out the royalties. So all of the overhead and the initial P&L, once a title becomes a backlist title and is a perennial backlist that sells year over year, it then starts paying for itself. But those are also very few and far between. We publish about 300 children's books a year at Source Books, and only a handful really have a long life that go over 1 to 2 years and continue to sell. So the backlist is extremely important, but we do invest a lot of money in the front list because in order to grow, and we are still in growth mode at Source Books, and in order to keep growing our market share, we need to find the next trend. We need to attract the new reader, especially on the kids side. There's such, everyone knows, there's such a epidemic of kids not reading as much as they used to. So it's like, what can we do to attract those readers and get young boys into your bookstores and buying books again? So we need that front list to keep on innovating and keep on publishing new and different things to speak to today's reader. So it's a balance for sure.
Yep. Backlist is important for, I think, every publisher because frontlist is where we're taking the risk, and frontlist is where it's volatile, right? Like frontlist is, even just last year, you take a look at a book like The Correspondent that came out in April and then sort of was a slow build. Nobody expected it to take off the way it took off after August. But that was one success. There were a whole bunch of other frontlist titles that from big or small publishers that didn't work. Frontlist is where you are taking the risk. Backlist, at least there's some stability. That you may get some peaks every once in a while, but by and large, backlist is, and this is true at the store level too. Right? We publish Kindred. That is something that I can essentially count on year over year to sell a certain number of copies. It is going to have a cycle. I know in the summer, during summer reading, it's just going to pick up a lot more than say in September or October. But I know the pattern, and I've known the pattern now for decades, and it's going to stay that. Maybe it goes up and down a little bit, but essentially it's the same. And you see that in the stores too. But even for your stores, that's the stable sort of piece. Whereas even for you, when you're buying frontlist, you're taking a risk. And that's to, going back to Craig's point, depending on what risk you take, how big is your printing, that's how much you're paying out. So sometimes you can't take that risk. You lower your print runs and then you make your margins worse. So either way, you could lose out.
I think for any publisher to find financial grounding, their overall sales has to be 30% or more of backlist. And for us at Milkweed, ours is 80%. And that's because we've had Braiding Sweetgrass, thanks to all of you, keeping that out there and alive. Ada Lamone's backlist, Amy Nezuko-Matado's World of Wonders. That backlist allows us to do what we can do with the front list. It supports the front list. But without that backlist, with the lower costs associated with that, because all the marketing has been done, the advancing has been done, we're able to set higher printings for those reprints. It allows us to be able to put that front list out. But we're also watching sort of the erosion of the front list in terms of how long it actually stays out on the shelf. Because books are moving. You guys know this. You're seeing books every single week, more books coming through. And for us, we've got to be able, as publishers, for some of those front list titles to become backlist perennials. And that's where we find our financial footing. There's no way possibly that you could survive as a publisher on just your front list.
Sourcebooks is 60% backlist.
Yeah, I think the industry average right now is 68, and it's grown every year since just before 2020. In 2018, it's sort of the front list, backlist. More backlist started to sell, and it changes year over year, but right around now, it's around 68%, if we believe Circana's numbers. We are, Beacon's been around since 1854. We're 172 years old. I mean, if we don't have a backlist, then we're not doing our job right. We have about, our backlist is around 72, 73%.
Okay. So the next part is really what the room wants to know more about. The real costs of marketing, because this is how they all can make books work for you. It's how you all are supporting their work. So the cost of ARCs, when we did this 10 years ago in Denver, and the cost for an ARC was 2 to 2.5 times what the PPB or the printed, when you print the final book, 2 to 3 times the cost of printing the final hardcover. So I don't know if that has changed a lot since.
No, I was going to ask, how many of you know that the cost of a galley per galley is higher than the cost of the actual book?
But see, so many don't.
Yeah, and I found a really interesting stat. Over the past 8 years, Sourcebook's title count had increased 22%, but our ARC volume increased 106%, because we were really just trying to blanket everyone with every book. And it became essential that we had to start cutting back on that because of the cost of creating them and the fact that many of them go unread. You know, you when you create a galley for every book on your list, there is a lot left in the warehouse at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, they are still 2-3 times galleys, and then, you know, and this is, blame us as publishers. This is our fault. Even for our galleys to stand out, then we start doing more on the galleys too. Like, oh, you know what? Maybe there's a die cut on the galley, or there's French flaps, or, you know, we'll do some embossing, or like, let's do a galley with decollage, or print on the inside of the cover. I mean,
Milkweed is introducing scratch and sniff covers that smell like sage and juniper, just for the whole outdoor vibe. It's going to be big.
Might be cheaper to just put the herb in the galley.
Yeah, right. We'll talk about that later. Be much cooler.
But you know, so part of the response is like, hey, why just do e-galleys? It's like, again, in this room, how many of you like e-galleys?
Wow.
There.
Oh wow. Yeah.
That's a larger
There were 2
than before. No, I saw at least 5.
But I mean, we're a tactile community. We want that physical. None of us probably read ebooks, so we want that. So no matter how much we say about digital galleys, I don't want to read a digital galley. You guys don't. But there are the costs associated with that. And the fact that it costs more than a hardcover book is crazy. And there's no way to get that down. And it is a matter of distribution. I went into the galley room for the first time. I'm like, where are my galleys? And they're gone. They're gone.
What
and I'm like, did I not bring enough?
Was it 11?
It was right after that first rep picks.
Yeah.
So, But it's an essential part of what we do. And the biggest thing we can do better, I think, as publishers and booksellers is really playing matchmaker as much as possible to ensure we're getting the right galleys into the right bookseller's hand. Because I know you guys get a lot and it's like, why are we getting this? But it's very, very hard with the amount of books that we're publishing and promoting and you guys are selling to always play matchmaker like that. But there's also just how many of those galleys are actually read, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. We're not getting rid of galleys. We're just being more selective in the ones that we produce because of the costs associated with them.
Cheryl.
Oh, wait, Jess, I think we need the mic over here. Sorry. Over here, Cheryl.
She was updating her LinkedIn page. Bad sign, Joy.
I was going to comment that the e-galley business is taking off with the younger staff. So it's a generational thing. You know, we have 100 employees over our 9 stores roughly, and the younger staff are going for the digital download books 3 or 4 times more than us older types.
Which is great to hear, because I mean, again, to Paula and Craig's point, we're not eliminating galleys. We're trying to be more thoughtful of how we do them and where we send them. But digital galley costs have also gone up, sadly. I mean, even in the last 2 years, they've gone up almost 100%. And you'll see even there, especially for smaller houses, that I don't know if anybody from Edelweiss is in this room, and if you're in this room, you know this already anyway, but Edelweiss has doubled their prices. So there are small publishers that are saying, okay, we don't need to put every book in an e-galley either, or we'll find other ways to do it. And so that is part of the challenge too, because at the end of the day, cost becomes a thing for everybody. Michael, you have the mic?
No,
Oh, Audrey has the
wants
mic.
it.
I understand the cost of galleys, and I think there could be a way to make it more efficient, but I think it's also a huge logistical issue. But when I look at a galley box like that, when it has all these bells and whistles, when all I want is a book, I don't even need a real cover. I just a title on it. Like, I wonder what the price differential is for that. And then the other thing is that if the publisher values Indie Next, getting the galley after the Indie Next date for me means it's probably not going to be read in time for anything, even by pub date. So I guess there's also like a balancing, like if you want it to be an Indie Next consideration, it should probably get printed earlier, because then afterwards it's probably a lot less chance of someone actually wanting the art.
Agree.
Really good point.
And just to say though, a lot of times, just so everyone knows, we are beholden to the author because the cover isn't approved yet. So and if the author has final approval on their cover, they don't want the ARC to go out without the cover. So we absolutely want the ARCs to be in your hands so that you can nominate for Indie Next. But a lot of times it is out of our control. Right. Yeah. But then what happens is then we do multiple galley printings. We do the white cover, then we do the finished, and then we do the printed book. And by that time, then we're really underwater. So it's either one, we have to figure out one or the other. And you're right. If we're going for Indie Next, we should just white cover, send it out.
And to your point about the boxes, and like I said earlier, that's our fault. I mean, we are all trying to make the galley stand out in some ways. We want you to open the box. We want you to pick the book out of the. So it's one way to do that, to make the galley a little more effective, and definitely costs more. But it is a slip. I don't even know if it's a slippery slope. It's a slope that we are on already. And it's hard for us to get going to be coming. I mean, I did galleys with, I sent Madelines and chocolates, and it's like, okay, all of this thing is going to cost. The galley is whatever, $4, and then you're putting all this stuff, and then you're buying a box that's $1.50.
And then you're shipping it.
Yeah.
I would love to get the room's feedback when you get a fancy box with an ARC in it. Are you more tempted to open it up and read it, or does it really not matter?
No.
Here, can we do a show of hands, because this will be easier? How many are totally enticed by that?
Very few.
Okay.
I mean, there's something, some of those books that I published with Algonquin, we went over the top with the packaging, and it was to say something. If it was Jonathan Evanson's West of Here, that went out in a wooden smoked salmon box with all these vintage postcards and everything. And it made like it was a big deal. We didn't do that all the time, but I think, we're in a place where we're all competing for your attention. And the one thing that should be noted is so much of publishers' marketing dollars go into the independents to get your attention and your excitement, because we know what you guys do in this arena here just helps the book all around. And I've seen it so many times. And so much of our marketing dollars goes into selling it into the stores. And then there's also the marketing dollars that we hope to have to sell it out of the stores. And so a lot of that is just trying to get attention in there's a lot of things going on all the time. And sometimes we don't do that at Milkweed. But, I've had that experience. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it's like, do we need another bucket hat with a galley or whatever it is? Some people want the bucket hat. So
during the sell-in, the galley cost is probably the biggest marketing expense in the sell-in period. Mm-hmm. Michael, you've been waiting.
Yeah. Would you touch briefly on digital listening?
The ALCs?
And the ALCs?
Yeah.
And maybe also with a show of hands of booksellers here who are listening to galleys.
ALCs, wow.
That's great.
The challenge with the ALCs is they are finished audio. So they come much later in the life of the process. So, and maybe that is a market opportunity, because up to now, nobody has figured, there is no process. There are some big houses that have their own apps that you could download some of the audio, but the audio process is a little bit later for most of us. I think we're trying to get galleys 6 to 7 months before the on sale date. Mm-hmm. Audio comes a little bit later. So, Jess.
Okay, I have. There's so many questions. What I'm thinking is we're going to do a quick lightning round of the rest of our slides for the topics. Just lightning round, because I think you will all benefit more by answering us talking about your questions. But I just want you to be thinking about some more things. We will come back to this slide because tours, I know, is a very huge thing. I hear that every time I talk with booksellers. So, and marketing budgets.
I'll just say one thing. Just on an average, to tour an author, one city is about $2,000. And that's just one author going to a city with nothing, there are some authors who have to travel with someone. There are some authors who will only go first class. There are all these other quirks that you have to handle, but average $2,000 per author per city.
So keep that in your minds. Because here are some of the other challenges that the publishers are facing. The print runs, and that's you all ordering ahead of time. I think just in time. And I totally understand it from the bookseller's point of view, but from the publisher's point of view, it makes it very challenging, especially if there become challenges getting on a printer, when there are shortages, etc. So if they're printing just what's being ordered or a little above, because you now have heard there's so much risk, that's one of the factors. So it's just something to keep in mind.
And a higher unit cost.
Right.
Higher unit cost as a result of that. Yeah.
Yep. I don't know how much, we will cover this. I just know because I do hear about this all the time, and the publishers are selling more and more direct. And most booksellers that I've heard from say, why are they taking business from us? We're supposed to be the people supporting their list. We're supporting the mid list and the entire list and the smallest books on their list. So why are they doing this, I think we will cover that more because I know you'll all have questions about that. And then we've talked a little bit about ebooks. I didn't realize the cost for ebooks had gone up so much.
Ebooks, not really, because the ebook creating an ebook is still a relatively inexpensive piece. Creating an audiobook, another question. The cost of e-galleys has gone up. That's
Okay.
it.
Interesting. Okay, so now we can go to Q&A because I think that's where you're all going to get the most. And there were so many hands up, and Jess and Karen are ready to get the mics to people.
I happen to have one already. Hi, my name's
You
Annie.
brought your own mic?
Super fancy. I took it out of my bag. What I'll say in terms of the ARCs, what I feel like our buyer has a great relationship with our reps. And a lot of times that's really what inspires our booksellers. Like they will get it shipped and it has their name on it.
Mhm.
So even if the cover is white, it will be addressed directly to the bookseller. And that goes such a long way. Like they ask, the reps tend to ask frequently at our store, like which booksellers like which topics. And it's such a nice way to do that matchmaking because like they're not going to care what's on the front cover. They just care that the publisher cared enough to ask what my bookseller making in New York City, like $18 to $22 an hour still has a lot of value, still has a lot of contribution to this overall huge, ecosystem that we're a part of just by putting their name on the shipping label. It really is a nice thing that our buyer and the reps make such an effort to individualize it. So
Yeah, I would encourage you to connect more with your reps about those kinds of names, or connect with us directly, especially for smaller publishers that are distributed by other houses. Craig's name's on the rep pick list, my name's on it, your name is on it. I mean, just reach out. Most of us, again, going back to, it's not like we don't want to give galleys. Like we
Totally.
want to give galleys.
Yeah, but that connection and community, I started as a bookseller in North Carolina, and I remember working the floor, doing the shelf talkers. And I remember, I think it was back in 1993, a sales rep came in and gave me a milkweed book. It was called Montana 1948.
yeah,
And he had read my shelf talkers. He said, Craig, I think this one will be right up your alley. And I know, firsthand the importance of connecting. And I think we all encourage, especially at independent houses, is making that connection with us, not just the reps, but, those are, once we get to know what your staff are reading and who's hand selling what, us playing matchmaker and getting it into the right hands. This is, we all grew up. I knew Sanj when he was a bookseller in
I was about
Wordsworth,
to say,
and I was selling
he would
Algonquin.
he would
And
bring me galleys. Like
Yeah.
these are the books
Yeah.
you're going to want to read.
and I
So,
think like if there's a way that like we think about like what the cost is, the cost of the human connection, maybe that's less, and then we don't need the box, we don't need
Mhm.
the bookmark, we don't need the individual printing. We just need the other arm of what we do to recognize that the booksellers have a lot of inherent intrinsic value to
Mhm.
everything.
Oh, absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
you don't even have to convince us about that.
I'm just passionate about
Yeah,
that.
and we really
Our staff recs totally went up when we started doing that. So something
Yeah.
that Kristen, who's our buyer, she's like very passionate about asking each bookseller, like, what do you read?
Yeah.
What can I get for you? Who can I reach out to? And we've definitely seen engagement go up.
I mean, if you seriously, the amount of times I go onto the Indie Next Pick and I review the previous 6 months, and I do this, and I look who's reading what before, and I do significant outreach going, this is the person I want to read this book. And that takes a lot of, I thought I knew a lot of booksellers. There are so many new booksellers. And for me to comb through that list, it's a big thing, and go, that's the bookseller I want to get it to. And I'm going to send a letter with that. So there's a lot of, and Michael at Europa, like he's the king of this, is like those connections of putting the right Europa books in the right hands. There's a lot of legwork on building those kind of communities like that, but we're doing that as much as possible.
Right. And standing up our own internal indie sales force last year was really what we wanted to do, was get those really intimate connections for our books with all of you. And it took, I think Valerie's here in the audience. I think we underestimated. It was a good 8 months that we really just had the reps focusing on relationships and building relationships and making those contacts. And it's just we've been rewarded in so many ways because of that. So, thank you all for being so welcoming to all of our new sales reps that hit the road. But also, I completely agree. The connection is really what makes the difference. And it's really, it's a special community.
Karen, row 3. Okay.
Hi.
Hey.
I have a comment and also a question. So going back to the galley boxes, I think my comment would be is that you're probably barking up the wrong tree sending them to booksellers, because everybody here is interested in what's in the page. If you want those money to go the farthest, you should be sending it to the book influencers. They're the ones that would be making the unboxing videos and helping you go viral on Book Talk. And then that would be the thing that would be leading
You're
to the
breaking my
pre-sales.
heart. I think every bookseller is a book influencer.
I mean, we have marketing and we do all those types of things, but what we're usually advocating for is the events that we're hosting at the shop, not necessarily keep an eye out for this galley that's going to be coming out in 3 months. Like, our audience isn't going to be remembering that, versus other platforms, which that's their entire platform, is to talk about that. And so my second question leading into the events is, how do you choose which authors you're going to support? I understand it's extremely expensive. My store is in New York City. I totally get, like, a hotel room there is astronomical, but is there a way as a bookseller to, like, try and pitch or try and, like, advocate for authors who might not necessarily be, an immediate opportunity to go out, but someone that would really like to have, out on tour?
Absolutely. We have on Edelweiss our event grids, and we encourage everyone to put in their requests. And even if they don't see an author that they would like to come to their store, or an author who the tour cities are not in your location, we always say, put the request in, because the author may have family near where you're located and they may be visiting, and we may be able to arrange something. So there's always an opportunity to get that request in, and we do it through Edelweiss, through the author events groups.
I also just want to chime in. Last week, Maria's Bookshop in Durango, Colorado, reached out to us because they were interested in having poet Jake Skeets at their store. And it was such a thoughtful email that they sent to us. And it was like, here's why we want Jake. Here's how we partner with the local community college. Here's how we're tied into Navajo Nation down here. And it was not just for any author. It was like, this is what we want to do. This is the audience we're going to bring. Durango wasn't on. I love Maria's Bookshop. I've been down there for events before, but it's a little out of the way. It's not. And, those are the stores. I remember being one of the first publishers to start sending authors to Watermark Books in Wichita. It was like, who's going to Wichita? And I went there I took Heidi Duro for her debut novel there. And it was like 150 people because of what they wanted to do, not just for the author, but for Algonquin at that time. And it was like, hey, we want you here as a publisher, and we want this author specifically. And that meant a lot. And it's like, hey, we can continue going down those same pathways and the author only goes to San Francisco, Seattle, New York, or whatever. But when we get those letters, we're open to that. And when we feel like it's dialed into that specific author that they really want it, we're going to try to make it work, despite what the budgets are, so.
To go back to, the question is, how do we choose? I mean, I think, look, all of us, hopefully all of us who are in the publishing space are there because we love books. And then when we get proposals or when the book gets launched internally, we all okay, we think this is an exciting book. We think we can do something with this. So we all sort of have mental lists or think about how many we're going to print for the book. But then a lot of this is fluid, because as we start getting reactions from whether it's the sales estimates that we get from the reps, and those are based on conversations that they're having with different stores, or we start seeing orders, then it's like, oh wait, this is, or we start getting trade reviews, and you look at those and go like, okay, maybe we need to change how we're thinking about book X. Maybe this has a different kind of potential. So there's that piece. So when you are sending in your orders, think about that. The initials make a difference. The other piece is, as Paula said, the grids. Use them, because those are also how we sort of look at what the interest is to have the author out there. But what Craig said is, I think, sort of take that back. Is like, if you have an author that you think you can do something interesting with and different, just reach out. Like, put what your thoughts are together. It doesn't have to be an elaborate proposal, but this is what's the passion. This is what we can do. Most of us will try to make that work.
Lane is next, I think.
I think I already have okay. I wanted to say, I think it's interesting that in a room full of booksellers, no one knows how to try and cut costs better than us booksellers in the book industry. So just thinking about galleys being the most expensive thing, we're like, yeah, we can help you cut costs with that. Anyway, I think the thing that stands out to me is sometimes with like the boxes, sometimes it's really cool to have like the extra little thing in the box. Like I still have a snow globe from a little like paperweight from Snow Globe, which I think was awesome. But I think the thing that we're seeing is that we get a lot of like duplicates. Like we'll get more than one box and we don't need more than one box necessarily. Unless it's like it's already got the hype already. Or like people are already wanting to read it, or like we need to request more copies because like 5 people on staff want to read it. And then some arcs that like maybe one person on staff has read, like wants to read, and then we'll get like 5 copies of them sent to us from the publisher. So I think that maybe like streamlining that's like, oh, this store has gotten 2 copies. They're good unless they request more, or something like that would be, that's what we're seeing at our store anyway.
Where's your store?
Boise, Idaho, Rediscovered Books.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think because I have been hearing this also, and it is sort of tragic in ways that there are hundreds of stores not getting any galleys, and then there are many stores that are getting way too many. So in this room, and this is a tiny snapshot, how many of you who are booksellers think that you get multiple copies of many galleys?
Oh.
Wow.
So guys,
That's
there's,
interesting.
if you take a look at this table, probably where that's happening is not from this table here, if you know that. There are also the people that decide not to participate in this conversation today about the economics of publishing. Let it be. Sorry. Speaking. Yeah. Yeah.
Lane Jacobson from Paulina Springs in Sisters, Oregon. I have a quick comment and a question, which I know we're getting to kind of beating a dead horse on the galley thing, but I know, speaking for myself, and I know speaking for a number of my peers that I've had conversations with over the years, sometimes the boxes and like the extra bells and whistles are actually a turn off, because for some of us, that's a signal that one, it can sometimes for me come across as inauthentic, where like, hey, we're trying to get you to read this book, instead of, hey, this book is really special. Read it. You're going to love it. And that goes back to those relationships and getting to know the booksellers and that kind of stuff. And, we all get these questions from customers all the time about, oh, did you read this, book that's a #1 New York Times bestseller? And I don't really read bestsellers because they're selling on their own. And I feel that I have a responsibility to read more, like mid-list stuff to give those a boost. And that extends also to my relationship with like galleys and stuff. And this is anecdotal in my experience, but usually the books that take off in a really authentic way are not the ones that have these huge marketing pushes. Usually, and obviously I'm, like I said, anecdotal, but it feels like a lot of those end up, they don't take off in that same way when it's the books that are like, this is a really special book. And maybe it's like highlighted in the Edelweiss catalog, but it doesn't have this stuff. So that's a comment. And then a question that, we can probably, this is a whole other session and it can be pinned, and not to put any of you on the spot, but when you're talking about trying to eke out margin and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you all have thoughts about publishers' use or policy on using AI to cut those costs where they can, with, you know, like artist covers and all that stuff, and the potential damage that could have, particularly with the indie channel. I know certainly for myself and a lot of my peers, at least to a degree that we're aware of when AI is used, it's a huge turnoff. Really, anywhere in the supply chain. We all love efficiency, operations managers and stuff, but only up to a point and not with a human cost.
I think, you know, if maybe this will help, but if you're all familiar with The Salt Stones by Helen Wybrow, which came out last year, you know, just for this program here, I did sort of like a breakdown of where our costs go. And 30% author advance, right there, 30% right out the door, because we support our authors in a very big way. 50% printing and production cost. Editorial, well, I'm sorry, that's just printing. Editorial production, you're looking about 4%. We have like 12% for marketing. A lot of that goes into selling the books into the market. That's having Helen at Winter Institute, having her at the NEBA Spring Forum. $1,000 for the MBA long list sticker. You have to pay $1,000 for that sticker. And if it makes the short list, you have to buy it again. We sold 14,000 copies, all mainly in the independent market, which was absolutely brilliant. We toured her in the independent market, a lot in New England, with the idea that we're hoping that there will be a long tail and that it will turn into backlists. But AI is not going to solve many of those problems. And for us, Mary Slager, who did that book cover, you know, that artwork was Helen's daughter, Ren, that did that artwork. And so some other houses might do that, but, you know, ours is like a passion project. I see where AI could help with maybe descriptive copy or anything like that, but the production and printing and all those costs are going through the roof. And like we said here, maybe one or two titles on that front list breaks even, you know, and can turn into a backlist. But it's a tough business, you know, in that way. So,
yeah, I mean, I think I can speak for most. Well, I probably can't speak for most publishers, but I'll do it anyway. I don't think anybody in the publishing space is interested in getting content created by AI.
No, absolutely not. In fact, we're trying to figure out how to make our books more special, because there is going to be so many AI generated manuscripts coming out this year. I mean, there's so many authors that's what they're doing. And so how do we make our books more valuable? Because, you know, they are the art, and we do not use AI for any type of art or any type of creative talent at all.
And that's probably going to stay true for a while. I mean, I think where you're going to see us as publishers use AI, as Craig indicated, like trying to figure out descriptive copy, trying to figure out keywords, honestly, one of the ways we could potentially use AI is to be a better matchmaker between who we send galleys to. You know, like to take in a bunch of Excel spreadsheets and make it work smarter, to your point about operations. So those are the kinds of things where we would potentially use it. But at least I don't think in my lifetime we are in the publishing space going to do content creation using AI.
Hello. My name is
Hello.
Dominic Smith. My wife and I own Underbrush Books in Northwest Arkansas. I would love, I'd love to circle back and learn some more about Libro's advanced listener copies. When we first opened in 2023, it was very much my wife who was the driving force behind our buying. Our joke was always that I was the numbers guy and didn't really do a whole lot of books. However, as Libro has rolled out more and more advanced listening copies, the number of books that I consume every year only increases. So as we have this conversation about the cost of galleys and the cost of ebook galleys, I'd love to know more about y'all's decision to release more advanced listening copies. Again, completely understand we're getting final copies. I don't expect a whole lot to be able to nominate for Indie Next, but like I said, would love more insight into that.
A simple answer is it was easy for us to work with Libro and give them ALCs. And we heard from so many booksellers that they loved listening to the audio. So I think most of us are putting stuff in the ALCs. If the timing works out, and Libro is a great partner to work with. And so most of us will continue to work with them.
Is there, and I guess this is kind of my follow-up, is there a particular qualifier? Are y'all trying to put as much content in there as possible? Just again, try to be as voracious as possible.
I think it's going to depend on it. Every publisher is going to look at it a little differently. But yeah, I think most folks are trying to put whatever content they can in there.
Yeah.
Chris, turn it on.
Do you remember the song Smashing a Perfectly Good Guitar? We're talking about no. We're talking about rising production costs, and
Come on, Karen, toss it.
Well done.
Thank you. Team effort. The number of damaged books arriving, the number of boxes of every single copy is damaged books that are arriving in our store breaks my heart. And I know it has to be raising everyone's costs. So I don't know if there's anything that we could do industry-wide about trying to get these things packaged better, shipped smarter.
Are they across all publishers, or are you seeing that happen in specific instances?
Some are worse than others, but it's everyone. Some are worse than others, but it's everyone. And not only does that, now I have to process a damage claim. Like, I have to keep track of the credit. I have to keep track of the reorder. Like, I disappoint customers who special ordered it and wanted it for a gift giving occasion. That's a problem. Soup to nuts, and it's a lot. I don't know. Raise a hand. Is everybody seeing that?
Okay.
Just to let you know, if they're from Milkweed, they're distressed. It's sort of vintage distressed. So
no, but point taken.
Wow.
I mean, we'll take that back with distribution folks. Pardon?
Yeah.
It costs them too, though. So.
Not funny story, but we got a carton of books in-house. We had taken on another client, and their previous publisher sent us a carton of their books as samples. And when we opened it up, there must have been 40 books in the carton, no packing whatsoever, hardcovers on top of paperbacks on top of hardcovers, and then there was a footprint on top of the top book. Just a boot. Yeah. So, but no, it is something we have to go back to and just do a quality check.
And Joy has it on her list when the ABA goes.
It comes up.
Publishing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely keeps coming up.
Okay. Again, I want to preface this by saying I know that it's not this table necessarily.
It's fine. Throw brickbats. It's okay.
I'm one of the middle-aged people who likes an e-galley. And I know that a lot of people don't like e-galleys due to the physical thing that you can read an e-galley on. Nobody likes reading on an iPad. I mean, sorry, maybe some of you like reading on an iPad, but that e-readers generally suck. In my opinion and my colleagues. So again, I know it's not you guys, but is there anything that the publishing industry can do to perhaps release some of the chokehold on good e-reader technology that makes it easier to have an e-galley, even though they're, again, prices going up. But and then is there a quantity, like printing fewer copies, it costs more. If you're sending more copies of e-galleys, does it cost less per unit? Like how does so then as an industry, is there a move that I know it's going on in the background, but I think your e-galley readers would appreciate easier e-galleys. And I know bookshop.org is doing it and we're promoting it and all of those things, but that would help.
Tell me more when you mean easier e-galleys.
And
you want to read on a
I want
to read on a Kindle.
I want to read on a Kindle.
An e-ink.
Yeah, e-ink is just
Edelweiss sends it out as a PDF and not as an EPUB.
Yeah,
so
or if I'm cranking through like 2015's greatest Kindle. I've had this thing for a decade and it's barely alive, but that's the reading experience that is like I read my e-galleys on that. And I would love for more of my booksellers too, but we don't want them to buy one and we're not going to buy one for them.
So the choke point there is not Edelweiss. It's not the publisher. No. It's actually the person that holds the technology. Andy yesterday.
We said that.
Yeah. So Andy yesterday dropped this little hint that their bookshop.org is thinking of creating their own e-ink reader. Okay. So if they truly end up doing that, I think we could definitely work with Bookshop in getting you EPUBs earlier in the process.
And we have 4 minutes left. So just putting that out there.
Rebecca.
Yeah. Can we go back to the slide about why publishers are selling direct? What did you guys plan to talk about with that one?
Oh, is that me?
That's you.
I get off. I don't we're a bookstore too. We're an independent bookstore at Milkweed. I guess selling direct, publishers doing it. I think this has been going on for a number of years. We at Milkweed, because we're sort of a nonprofit and a community center as well. If you've ever been to our office, we also have an independent bookstore. And so we send a lot of sales direct through that independent bookstore. You will see that on our website, for instance, we don't have Amazon, we don't have Barnes & Noble, we have bookshop.org, and we have Milkweed. And part of that is, as a nonprofit, having that direct sales. It's not a big part of our business, but, obviously we have an amazing sales group with PGW representing us, but there are a lot of organizations, especially different organizations we work with around the country. And sometimes they want to come directly to us for that. It's not a very big part of our business. I don't think it will ever be, but it's a very important part of a nonprofit, independent bookstore as well, to be able to get some direct business like that. But we're not really selling a lot direct to consumers as much as we are to some organizations or conferences, and also academic sales for us. We have a lot of academic titles being, adopted into the academic circles. And so we'll have some academic direct sales through that. So.
Yeah, for most publishers, if they're doing direct sales, it's less the sale, it's more collecting data. It's trying to figure out who's buying our books and when they're buying it, where they're coming from, that kind of information. That's mainly it. And then we can sit here and say, oh, we carry all books. There are so many mid-list books that are not in stores. And so for some publishers, that this is a better alternative than Amazon. So instead of going to Amazon to get the book, you just come to us for a mid-list book that you're not finding in your local bookstore. And that's another alternative. So it is, years ago, I when we were talking about this in some other context, I was like, most consumers who are buying from publisher websites are accidental consumers, in the sense that if you are buying online, you have other alternatives, often better alternatives. And going to the publisher's website is like, oh, I just happened to fall upon this kind of thing. So for most publishers, there are always exceptions. It is the data. For most publishers, we'd much rather do more direct marketing, not the sort of traditional direct marketing, but we more market directly to the consumer and to the kinds of things that the consumer likes instead of selling it to them. We'd much rather they buy it from a retailer.
Way up.
Oh, we're out of time.
We're around.
Yeah.
Just because we're out of time doesn't mean you can't talk to us.
Thank you. Yeah, and we'll stay up here for a little bit.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!